He never became king, but he changed the fate of kingdoms. A warrior in black armor, whose very name sent shivers down French spines. To his enemies, he was a butcher. To England, he was a legend. This is the untold story of Edward of Woodstock, the Black Prince. In the pages of medieval warfare, some names are whispered with awe and fear. Edward, Prince of Wales, better known as the Black Prince, was never crowned king, yet ruled the battlefield like one. A warrior groomed for greatness. Born in 1332, Edward III and Philippi of Hainault, he seemed destined to lead a golden age of English power. But behind the victories, the legends, and the black armor lay a brutal truth. His rise was soaked in blood, ambition, and war. This is the story history books softened, the story they didn't teach you in school. Born into war. From the moment of his birth at Woodstock Palace, Edward was royal. He was the heir to a throne already wrapped in conflict. England and France were locked in the early stages of the 100 Years' War, a war over a crown, pride, and power. As a boy, Edward was trained like no ordinary prince. He mastered the sword before he could read. He learned strategy at the foot of his father, King Edward III, and his mother, a powerful noblewoman from the Low Countries, filled him with the fire of continental politics. By the age of 16, Edward led troops into one of the most famous battles in medieval history, the Battle of Crecy. The year is 1346. The fields of northern France tremble under the weight of war. A 16-year-old prince rides at the front, not behind his men. The French army outnumbers the English 3-1. Their knights are legendary, but the English hold a secret weapon: discipline and longbows. The Battle of Crecy would change warfare forever. Edward, still a teenager, commanded the right flank. French knights charged again and again, and fell in droves to English arrows. By nightfall, over 1,500 French nobles lay dead, including King Philip's brother and the blind King John of Bohemia. Edward earned his nickname that day, the Black Prince, either for his armor, his brutal style, or the fear he inspired. Whatever the origin, the legend was born in blood, chivalry, and slaughter. 2. The English Edward was the perfect knight, noble, fearless, and chivalrous. But ask the French, and they would tell a different story. At the sacking of Limoges in 1370, Edward ordered his troops to storm the city. Over 3,000 civilians, men, women, and children, were reportedly massacred. Edward had once promised mercy to the city, but when it rebelled, he unleashed hell. Was this the justice of a warrior betrayed, or the wrath of a dying man seeking vengeance? This duality haunts his legend. To many, he embodied the code of chivalry. To others, he was a ruthless enforcer of English dominance. The capturing of a king. Edward's most stunning achievement came in 1356 at the Battle of Poitiers. Outnumbered again, his forces lured the French into terrain that neutralized their cavalry advantage. His archers cut down knights. His men captured King John II of France. It was one of the greatest military victories in English history, and one of the most humiliating defeats for France. The Black Prince personally treated King John with honor, even dining with him after the battle. But the cost of this war, and of holding a king hostage, would come back to haunt him. The Treaty of Bedigny, signed in 1360, made Edward a ruler of vast French lands. But holding them was another story. From glory to grief. Despite the victories, Edward's health began to decline. Possibly suffering from dysentery or a wasting disease, he grew weaker with every campaign. His reputation suffered too. As Prince of Aquitaine, he levied high taxes to fund his wars. Rebellions rose. The once gallant hero was now seen by many as a cruel overlord. His marriage to Joan of Kent, a cousin and political ally, produced a son, Richard II, but Edward would never see him crowned. The Black Prince died in 1376, aged just 45, a year before his father the king. Edward was buried at Canterbury Cathedral. His epitaph reads, "Such as thou art, sometime was I, such as I am, such shalt thou be, a prince of two worlds." Edward is remembered as the great warrior, but what made him tick? How did he go from battlefield hero to unpopular overlord? Perhaps it was the world he inhabited. Edward lived in an age when kingship wasn't hereditary, it was earned. A monarch wasn't a figurehead, he was a general. A prince wasn't groomed, he was forged in the fires of war. For Edward, LT was a responsibility, not a privilege. When he died, he held the title Prince of Wales, Duke of Cornwall, Earl of Chester, and held vast lands in his own right in France. He was a ruler, not just an heir. And what did he have to show for it? A legacy of blood? Edward III kicked off the 100 Years' War, and Edward carried it on his back. As Prince of Wales, he spent more time fighting than reigning. But unlike his father, who saw victory as God's command, Edward knew each battle was a political choice, a gamble to keep the crown in English hands. The result, a debt that drowned his realm. Historian Sharon Turner wrote, "Never did so much blood flow in vain for the acquisition of so little." Edward's story shows how war can corrupt even the best intentions. He wasn't a tyrant, but a wartime leader, and those aren't always the same. The Black Prince Was Edward's legacy set in stone? Or is there more to his story? Today, we remember Edward III's victories and his claim to the French throne. But he was also a son, a husband, and a politician. Edward was close to his father, accompanying him on campaigns and acting as his deputy. But when King Edward III considered giving up his claim to the French crown, allegedly Edward the Prince threatened to disinherit him. Duty and loyalty. That was the stuff of princes. Yet Edward also loved the finer things in life. He hosted lavish tournaments, attended plays, and was a patron of the arts. He commissioned works celebrating his victories and his lineage. Edward wanted to be remembered as the greatest of all English princes. We know him as the Black Prince, a title that came from the battlefield. But Edward was many things, not least a master of perception. History remembers the warrior, but Edward shaped his image. In 1361, he distributed medals to soldiers commemorating his victory at Poitiers. On them, King John kneels beside his horse, while Edward gallantly offers him a gauntlet. It was propaganda, but effective. We still tell the tale. Myth, memory, and legacy. Shakespeare spoke of him. Chronicles glorified him. Even centuries later, Napoleon studied his tactics. But was he a noble knight or a dark executioner? A patriot or a warmonger? Perhaps both. He was a man of his time when chivalry and slaughter walked hand in hand, when glory demanded brutality, and when a prince could be more feared than any king. His life remains one of the most dramatic in English history, not just for the battles he fought, but for the battles he left behind. Political, moral, and historical. Edward of Woodstock the Black Prince was never crowned, yet remains one of England's greatest warriors. His story is a mirror of medieval Europe itself. Magnificent, violent, complicated. History may not have made him king, but it made him immortal. If stories like this move you, legends buried beneath the battlefield, history told with fire, then subscribe to the channel. Let the past inspire your future. This is our channel.